Hey y'all, what it do? How are you guys? I know I'm a little bit late. I apologize. So that's not demo normally, but I had to kind of switch a little few things around. But thank y'all for showing up. It's about to be lit. I'm so excited. Um, so if you don't know who I am, I'm Paris, and this is the show called Conversations from Paris. It's a slight play on words, not conversations with Paris, but conversations from Paris. I started this during the pandemic, and my goal was to make it like conversations from an exotic place. So that's what I did. But anyway, I love y'all. I'm so excited that y'all tuned in. If you are tuning in a little bit later, go ahead and put on replay so we know that you're here because I engage in the comments. And I'm excited that we are like literally doing this. This has been something kind of I know you guys know I took a break, and so this is the first time I've really been on in a while, y'all. I don't know if y'all even realized that I did a little fake live like about a month ago, but nothing that's like a full live. So this is the first one. I'm excited about it. So yes, I miss you guys. Hey mom, how are you? And so I am literally super excited about this topic that we have today. I know you guys have been seeing my flyers about it. Uh, I was super duper stoked to do after I read a post. My cousin put a post up and she was talking about narcissism, the traits, and certain things that she had dealt with her experience, and her transparency was remarkable. And to be honest with you, I was literally I was taken away at just the level of vulnerability that it takes to share something like that. And then all the conversation she got, it was such a good conversation. It's literally the example of what I say. One conversation can shift a whole perspective. So I was super excited about that. So no further ado, I'm gonna bring my beautiful cousin on, Raven. Hold on, here she go. Hey y'all, hey Raven.
Hello there.
This is my cousin. Can I say your full government? Is that cool?
That's fine. It's on Facebook.
This is my cousin Raven Patterson. And I know you probably are wondering why I was so obsessed. But before I go any further, before we get and dive into it, Raven, what was your inspiration for sharing your post? Since that's kind of where I wanted to kind of go with this. I mean, we're gonna get exactly into what narcissism is. However, since you put the post on there, I wanted to know what was your what did you hope to achieve, right? Because let's be clear, Facebook or anything in social media, we use it for a lot of different things. I'm always interested in what people's motivation was behind something, good, better, and different.
Okay. It's definitely all great. All great intent. So anything I say um has it's always from love, with love, for love. And I just say that's anything that I would like to address, whether it be hard conversations, but it just stems that, I've been having like this push to really have some serious conversations that are not only impacting myself, but people that I didn't even know. I made that post and people were like, it feels comforting to know that someone else is aware or have experienced to some magnitude, you know, something that I've experienced or kind of dealt with. Now, it may or may not be the same or the same magnitude, but it's just one of those things where you just want to share, bring out the awareness, get healing. It's always to promote healing. That's the main point.
That's so dope. I love it. Especially because you said from love, with love. What did you say again? What
For
from
love.
love, for love?
Yeah.
That's beautiful. I think oftentimes we use social media for a lot of different reasons, and all of them are valid. But when you put thought into it, and I really appreciate what that looks like. I really appreciate how you how it shows up, and I think because of your calculation, it shows up in your engagement. I really believe that. I believe that when your intention um, is genuine, it really shows that. Really quick, can everybody else tell me? Can you hear me? I want to make sure that you can. It should not be low because I have not changed anything on here. So if you guys can't
Yeah,
hear me, just
Tracy
kind of let
saying
me know.
so. Tracy,
Yeah,
can you hear us now? Like, is it a little better or feedback? Like, what are you hearing?
yeah. And I would say it's low. Okay. Let's see here. I don't know. I've not changed anything.
Uncle Lawrence said it's fine. Who's are we both low or
Yeah. Let me know. Can you hear Raven better, or can you not hear me? And Tracy said it's very low. You guys have your Brittany says she can hear me loud and clear. Make sure you guys have your phone and your computer up loud. I'm not saying that you wouldn't. Just saying. First of all, hey everybody. I'm not sure. I'm sorry. I don't think I can change it, guys. If I can, I will try, but and I'm not really sure what it is. Um, First of all, let me just say hey to everybody real quick. Hey, Trey. Hey, Mom. Hey, Auntie Elaine. Hey, Lawrence. Hey, Brittany, girl, how are you? All right, guys, I'm hoping you can hear. I'm gonna just try to be intentional with my voice and project. And I'm hoping you guys can hear me. I've never really had a volume issue. Okay, Tracy said it's good now. Okay, perfect, 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 awesome. Okay, so yeah, so what I was saying is just we know people have all different type of motives or no motives, and they kind of just go on there. um I literally believe that when you come from a good place, people will perceive what your where your heart is, and they'll go for it. So I think that that's why I was so drawn to it. So I'm excited, and I appreciate you. And first of all, you just even willing to come on. Matter of fact, this was a collaboration, guys. Like literally, uh, we had a conversation, and I had talked to her about the post, and then she was just like, "I would love to talk more about it." And I'm like, "Well, say less, say less," because I think that these are the type of y'all know what I say. Conversation shifts perspective. Your whole life can change with one conversation. So I think sometimes we minimize it. We just think people are talking, or people just want a platform. Man, this is so much bigger than that. Listen, y'all, can y'all tell I like to talk anyway? I can talk without being on this thing with a lot less, overhead, to be very clear. But I believe this is an important conversation. So, since we're here, let's get to it. I want to put some definitions out here, okay, guys? It's important for me to put a little bit of I try not to get too technical, right? We're not in a class, but I do want to give very what am I trying to say? I want to be give accurate information, right? So we've heard of narcissism. It is a buzzword, and sometimes it's overused and it's misused. And so I want to tell you what it is and what it isn't. And so I'm going to give you some scientific, and then whatever Raven has to add to that part of it, she can. So from a psychology part, there is narcissistic traits, and then there is the narcissistic personality disorder. So when we talk about what the definition for narcissism is, in very layman terms, it is somebody that has extreme self-focus, someone that has an inflated sense of self, and usually they have a strong desire for recognition and praise. I like to put that out there because I think that's better than just the definition that they have for it. To me, sometimes seems a little cliche, and I think that's why people like what's the word? They kind of overdiagnose, right? And I don't want to do that. But I think it's best for me to say that it's a spectrum, right? Well, most things, it is a spectrum. It's not one hardcore, if you have all these, this is what you are. That's not how it is. It's a spectrum. And so there is the slightest bit to the most, right? And it just depends on how many of the traits you have that are going on at the same time, and how it goes when it comes to how often and how extreme they are. Okay. So again, the definition they give, if this is for the DM, anybody who knows psychology, there's something called DSM-5. That's how they diagnose. And literally, they say that it's inflated sense of self-importance, a lack of empathy for others, and a deep need for constant attention or admiration. Okay. Um, what narcissism is not just somebody with high self-esteem. That's what I want to be clear about. I think sometimes we really overdiagnose this thing because we have a problem, to me, as the world. We have a problem with people who have high self-esteem. Narcissism is not that. You can have a high self-image of yourself and not be a narcissist. So guys, let's not put that in the same basket. It's not. Again, I said an excessive, inflated sense of self, and again, these are some things that are subjective, which is why it's best to diagnose these things by uh, um, a professional. However, we can definitely talk about the traits, because while we're not trying to diagnose the disorder, I believe that this is a really, I'm going to be very careful about this statement. I'm just going to say it's more likely that you have a trait for narcissism and not actually have the disorder. Okay. So we'll talk about the traits, but I wanted you to know the difference between having the disorder. That's when it's a diagnosis, and there has to be a plan of treatment, which usually is just psychotherapy, which is just talking to a therapist. Versus if you have narcissistic traits. I'll just give you some of the traits, a few of them. A flawed sense of entitlement. That's one of them. A need of constant, excessive admiration. Hear that? Admiration's fine, but a constant, excessive admiration, meaning that you're going outside of yourself, and it's like you really have to get it from someone else because you just don't have it within. Obsessed with perfection, right? Have a sense of superiority. Lacks empathy for others, but demands it for themselves. Hear that one. Lacks empathy for others, but demands it for themselves, and has a difficult time taking criticism. I was very careful how I said that one. Has an extremely difficult time taking criticism. So before I go further, I'm gonna hand this off to Raven. I need y'all to see that we on one accord, and this is by accident. Do y'all see we got our same shirt on? Like, embrace the peculiar. Come on, I'm just saying that wasn't even by accident.
Brand,
I appreciate you.
Supporting the brand.
I appreciate it. Yeah. I didn't even know she's gonna have it. That just means we on one accord today, y'all. We didn't even do that on purpose. So trust me, we on one accord. So okay, so I think that I got just a basic idea of the psychology of what narcissistic personality disorder is versus the narcissistic traits, what some of them look like as a general. And I think I told you one thing is not, it's just not having high self-esteem. That's not narcissism. So I'm going to toss it to you and ask you, if somebody asks Raven, what is narcissism? What do you think it is? And how do you classify it?
I would first say that I do have several degrees, and one in psychology is not it. So I am not a healthcare professional or anything like that, but I have, used a lot of healthcare professional services, therapy plug. But I'm just speaking off of, I'm great at researching. I've done that for a while. So just from what was researched, even just coming from my misconceived notion, because I thought all my life that narcissism was kind of like just arrogance, like you just arrogant, like you think you're the best at everything, the greatest at everything. And that's it. That was my only understanding until I started to, really turn to experts that, study this, teach it, breathe it. I defer to, that research, from my opinion, and everything you said is in alignment with what the experts suggest. It's written in articles. Google it, ask Siri. It's there. And so we're just addressing, like we said, not everything is not cookie cutter. And I like that you said it is a spectrum. And also to highlight, no one is called necessarily a narcissist, because even within that, there are different type of narcissists, or how these traits come out, and they may be a combination of one or the other, like grandiose, like everything has to be big, or like a show. And what we do is, they hide behind those insecurities and those grandiose behaviors or such. So there are different layers to this, and I am in no way diagnosing anybody. I have also exuded some traits of narcissism. Not even a narcissist called me a narcissist. And so that's how it kind of like, I'm like, what? Me? Who, me? And once I sat with it and learned, I'm like, it was just one of those, we both are, which also makes sense, because at the end of the
Hello.
day, sometimes people with those traits, or that may be on a classified, schedule ABC, whichever one, spectrum of narcissism, they often do turn to other ones, like you join them in trauma bonds and stuff like that, or they tend to sometimes get to, I don't want to call people prey, but it's like they unite themselves with people that technically you can prey on. Like you can be in that, you can operate in that, and they become like very submissive, to that person. So if it's not a significant other, it becomes children, or other relatives, family, friends. But one of the other traits that narcissists or people with, on the spectrum or have those characteristics often have trouble and difficulty maintaining and managing personal relationships. So if somebody, don't have too many friends, it's kind of like because we're not, like we talk, we're not meant to be siloed. We weren't created that way. We're community
Yeah.
people. We're meant to exist, within community, within family, within a friend group, within whatever group that serves you and puts a smile on your face. But that's how we're meant to thrive. And there are barriers, that trauma creates that probably prevent us from doing that as effectively as we would like to. But you're spot on with what the research suggests and what the expert says. Like spot
No,
on.
that's good. And I don't want you to, let me say this. I tell everybody this. Y'all know I'm not a therapist yet, but y'all do know I'm a psychology student and I research and and so I'm very I'm forthright with the fact that I'm a mental health advocate. And I don't think there's anything wrong with people that are advocate for us to talk about mental health
Yeah.
issues. So you don't have to have a degree. I'm tired of people saying that to be able to talk about certain things. Just educate yourself.
Yeah.
And we can all educate ourselves. We all need to educate ourselves. And that's the purpose of us taking this research and coming forth and talking about these conversations. So, and you hit it on the head. I didn't even get there yet, but a lot of times we're having these things, these traits, and you have a lot of them. It is hard for you to maintain relationships, or I'm gonna take it a step different. It's hard to maintain healthy relationships,
Oh, yeah.
right? A lot of times you'll see people that have tons and tons of relationship around them, and it's not necessarily healthy, right? Because like she said about the trauma bond, that's the whole thing. I'm going to get into that because that's a real word. If you don't know what it means, and I know you don't want to use the word pray, but I'll say it like this: there are different personality types that are um, they easily integrate, and for me, I think that when we talk about somebody that might be dealing with several of the narcissistic personality traits, um, there's a certain type of person that they're going to look for that can handle dealing with somebody that's highly entitled, dealing with somebody that needs a lot of attention, dealing with somebody who needs to be constantly affirmed. Like there's a certain type of person that they kind of go towards because I think that again, it's gonna feed them. That's what they need. And so the reason we're talking about this is to not point fingers, but is to expose um the idea behind what it really is and what it's not. Like she said, she used to think it was just being arrogant, and it's so much more than that. It's so much more. Listen, I've had people point to somebody that, again, just had a high self-esteem and really believed that that person was a narcissist. And I'm like, nothing else you are saying can, validate that. So I can't agree with you. That's just a matter of opinion, and we have to be super careful not calling people out, because then what you do is lessen the intensity of the word, right? And you lessen you invalidate the people that have real experiences. It's almost like, and this is why we have to be careful with this. It's almost like the whole crying wolf thing. Like, if you keep on saying it's a wolf, then when it really is, nobody's gonna believe you. So do a little research, get an understanding. This is what these conversations are about. Leave this conversation, have more conversations, do more research on your own. Like she said, everything we're talking about, you can find it out there. You can look it up. Google is an amazing thing. And I'm not saying everything on Google is correct, but there are quality sources. And if you need some, ask me. There's tons of quality psychology resources where you can look this information up if you have additional questions, right? We're not going to answer every single question on this live. However, we do want to start the conversation, and really get people to see that when you use the word narcissism, or when you use the word narcissist, it might not be what you thought it was. Here are some things it is, and how to further deal with it. I think that sometimes we write people off when we say the word narcissist, and now they're the big bad wolf. And I just want us to be very clear to not do that. Hey, Jazz. So we did the defining here. I really want to go ahead and talk about what makes a narcissist, right? And I think that is I think that's a part of a thing. I think there's so many answers to that, but I'm going to go ahead and allow you to say what you believe it is, and then I'm going to kind of bring it in. I already know what your views are, so I'll bring in my and I'm sorry, guys, I'm a double back. She said there are several types of narcissism. There is. I'm going to come back to that, because that's a whole live in itself. Yeah. And I'm going to just say this real quick before we go, for anybody who does know, there are two main type of narcissists. There's going to be overt and covert.
Yep.
The one that everybody is most aware of is overt. That's the one we are mostly talking about, is overt. There is a covert, and it's a difference, and I'm going to explain that. That takes a little bit more depth. But I think when we talk about life and relationships, that's what people want to talk about, are relationships, because that's how we exist. And so when we talk about now, we're thinking of another person, and oftentimes what do? We point out who we think it is, and they're one, and we make it this bad thing. I'm here to say, if you even have some narcissistic traits, you're not a bad person. And I think she said, Raven said it even took her a second to realize that she had some, right? So same thing here. I also had to sit down when I started looking at some of these. I'm like,
Right. I'm like, that kind of sound like me,
Wait a minute. Wait, you sure that's the definition? You sure that's the definition? It can't be.
Yeah. What was important is I had to discover why, where did this stuff come from? Where did it stem from? And it really did take an introspective deep dive, and it was ugly. Like, I made a post, I think it was like early 2020, or I think it was 2020 or something like that. But I was like, I'm dealing with this ugliness that was inside of me. That is exactly what I was talking about. It was just these things that I wasn't aware how they got there until I literally was forced. Like, the pandemic shut us all down, broke us all down like fractions. So it was just time to sit with myself and like, listen, you could either choose to let this, because it's like I've always felt like I was in this conflict all my life with myself. And I never really understood why. Like, why do I feel like I'm at war, within myself? We could go there another day. But I understood what was going on. It was like, as I was maturing and understanding, and I was actually in therapy, and I saw my therapist every single week. And I say Thank you, Tracy. I appreciate that. But I was in, therapy, and that actually helped me a lot, my therapist, and also, just growing deeper with God. It was just that introspection, because he's very clear in Proverbs, the book, just to get this wisdom. And it's like, in all that get an understanding. So if anything you're gonna get, make sure you understand some stuff. And Joy said she put on her shirt too, so go ahead, Joy. Like, we could be the triplets out here. But it just forced me to kind of look within and to understand my biggest influencer. Like, this stuff was learned behavior for me. I had to unlearn things that I was taught just in parenting and stuff like that. And by means, I'll get this out the way. This is just in no way in regard an attack towards my mother or anything like that. It's just really having empathy and compassion to understand. My first question, once I sat with it and matured, was why? Why? Where did this story come from? Like, make it make sense, get an understanding. And that was how I explored, just navigating my life. And it started to make a lot more sense. It's not that it doesn't negate my experience or anything like that. It's just, you can understand something and dislike something at the exact same time, and it is quite okay. But it's quite okay. But that's what really got me interested in this, and just understanding better, because in order to not become, what you don't want to be, you have to understand how did that come to be. You know what I'm saying? So it's baby steps. It's ugly. It's a real ugly process. However, it's so worth it. It's so worth it. Like, the person that I became today, beautiful. And I mean, on the inside, like, I don't even care. The outside is just whatever, but just on the inside, just doing this work and making sure that I'm healed before I bring another person into this world was definitely just so paramount to me. So important.
Oh, so let me break that down, y'all. She said a mouthful. And I think the reason why, let me be clear, I've spoken about narcissism on a very small spectrum before, and wanted to speak about it more. But I think the reason, and I chose Raven to come on, is because, y'all, to talk about this mental health stuff, you have to be able to get past this barrier of vulnerability and transparency. You just do. You do. It is not regularly comfortable to talk about this stuff. And I think because people are not comfortable talking about it, it becomes this subject we just don't talk about. And guess what we end up doing unconsciously? We unconsciously end up making this prison in our mind, in our circles, in our families, where we just don't talk about it. And it's almost like, back in the day, they used to say, we don't talk about our business, and we don't tell our family business, or whatever happens in this house stays in this house. And I know that people think that's right, but I'm trying to tell you that's a bit toxic. It's a bit toxic, because what happens is we cannot talk about what the real struggles are. And therefore, people don't deal with it because they push it down inside, and they're not having real conversations. So for somebody to say, hey, let's talk about it, and then say, hey, I personally have dealt with this. I'm not talking as a pointer. I'm talking as a, hey, this was me. Hey, I went through this. Hey, you don't have to feel some kind of way, because this is my story too. I mean, that's why I was able to say, Raven, this is a great conversation to be able to have, because oftentimes we're so fast to say, I know a narcissist. I know somebody. Oh my God, girl. I know. Listen, my ex. Oh my God, girl. My sister. Oh my God. Good. I can't believe. Listen, my coworker, my boss. Oh my God. We're so fast to say that. And I'm not saying that those things can't be true. But what happens? What happens when you sit down and you hear some of these traits and you like, 2 plus 2 is 3. Yeah, I got about 3 or 4 of those, but they don't apply to me. But then you sit back and be quiet with yourself. And really, if you have enough self-awareness, you can say, you know what? I do have a few of those traits. You really have a few of those traits. And to be honest, it becomes a story of being able to say, okay, this is not the end of the road. I'm sorry. And the reason I want to confront this, because I think a lot of people say narcissism, and they make that person untouchable like a leper. There's no, like, y'all, there's a group called Surviving Narcissism. No lie, that's a whole group. They have people that say, hey, once a narcissist, you can't do anything, throw them away, get far away from them. And I really kind of hate it, because what happens is if people really do think they're suffering from it, or have some of these traits, and they can even hear it or feel it, or if someone knows a loved one does, what happens? They're going to hide and not talk about it or seek help, because they're already been thrown away. Right? So we have to be super careful. Let's have a conversation, because there is help. There is treatment. There are things that can happen. And again, everybody that has a narcissistic trait doesn't mean they're a narcissist. Okay. Here, I wanted to real quick put a comment on here that I see that, sorry, hold on. Jamal Chester says, I'm heavy on keeping in-house stuff in-house, unless it's with a counselor or a therapist. Jamal, I respect that. I do know vulnerability and transparency is very hard to know when you're safe to release that information. And then again, we're in a world where imperfect humans, that you can tell somebody something and they can use it against you. So I'm not going to say you're wrong, Jamal. What I will say though, and listen, if you know me, Jamal, you will know that I am a strong, complete advocate. I'm in school for it. An advocate for going to therapy or getting a counselor. I 100% believe that. I will say this though. There are a lot of people that won't even go to therapy or go see a counselor. So we have to have these conversations to encourage people to do the same. And then I also say that there are such things as safe spaces, right? I do believe that. And I know a lot of people don't feel that way because they've been hurt. They've been burned. I get it. 100% get it. And I'm not sitting here telling you should. I just don't believe that's the only way to share. But thank you for your your comment, because I think a lot of people really do need to be able to speak out until they can get there, right? Until you can get to a therapist, you need to sometimes say something so that you can not feel like you're burning in the inside, right?
I get what he's saying. In terms of advice, Leah, I don't say go and seek, counsel from people unqualified. In terms of what I think PJ was saying was that sometimes I think it of like akin to when we were kids and we'll fall and scrape our knee, and then we'll want like a Band-Aid. And so after a while, you put that Band-Aid on to stop the bleeding, but your parent or somebody else will say, girl, take that Band-Aid off so it can heal.
Air out and heal. Absolutely.
Air out and heal. It's like, keep the Band-Aid on, it won't heal. So having conversations about things that's hurting us or that have hurt us are just literally taking the Band-Aid off. And it's like I said, it's not to necessarily down, because when you think about it, we've all been hurt in some capacity, form, or way. I do always think to regulate that within yourself. Therapy was great. Like, it was a lot going on within me, and I wasn't able to identify what was happening until my therapist. We just started having these conversations, and we talked it out, literally. Like, we talk it out, and it came out. So when it comes to complex things, that it was just one of those things that it really did help. But in terms of I think we're just discussing, like, in terms of discussing things that can help us heal or can help our families or friends, loved ones, or whatever the case may be. Just sharing what's applicable, because honestly, to talk about this is really kind of uncomfortable,
and triggering.
I have my tissue on standby, just in case. But it really is hard. However, it's like, just from what I'm receiving, what I see in the DMs and just text messages, is that we have to stop being afraid to talk about what hurt us, and it's okay. And if we need to find those tools, to get, and sometimes that doesn't mean that the situation is always going to be solved. It just means that you have a resolve in you, because like my pastor said, whatever conflict that you do not deal with on the outside, it resides on the inside. And now we got all these ulcers, and you got all this inflammation in the body that doesn't make sense, but it's like you have unresolved conflict that's just living. And sometimes it'll manifest year over year, decade after decade, and it just is not well. And then it goes to like mental illness, in that case, if we don't deal with just the sickness of our body. So it can manifest itself in a real scary way. So it's like, whatever works for you, let it work. Work that thing out.
Yep. And I love that you said that. I want to go back real quick to something Jamal said, and he said they aren't qualified most of the time. Listen, I'm not sitting here and asking you to go to your friends or family. Listen, if you first time you're hearing me, you know I say something. Your friends are not your therapist. Your friends are not your therapist. Your friends are not your therapist. They're just not. I'm sorry. You put too much weight for them to fix you,
Yeah.
and they're not. No one can fix you. You have to actually fix you, but you can get assistance and help from a trained professional. And even though friends can be there, I don't believe that you just go ahead and put that weight on them. You shouldn't. So no, I feel you, Jamal. Do what's best for you. I just believe that there are more than one way to approach it, depending on how you go. Trace, I love that you said it's unfortunate there's a negative stigma associated with getting help. This is what the whole show is about, because there is in 2022 still a very negative association with getting help. So yeah, I definitely that's the point of these conversations, so we can make sure that we talk about it so people can go do that, right? And Brittany, I love what you just said. I heard from a therapist that therapists can't even help certain types of narcissists. So let me talk about that, because I think that's something I really want to really address. One of the hardest parts of narcissism, one of the most difficult traits that somebody with a narcissistic personality disorder, and again, there's a difference between having the narcissistic traits and having the disorder. One of the most difficult things with having the disorder is that um, they don't see anything that they're doing as wrong, right? When you have a self-awareness and can say, hey, that's me. Like sometimes you hear somebody say, oh, I'm depressed. Yep, that's me. I'm depressed. Or hey, I have anxiety. People say that. I hate to say this, but there are a lot of people that these are they're more appropriate ways of saying. People are saying it now. You see people talk about it now. So people used to not talk about being depressed. They would take that literally to the grave. Literally. People didn't talk about anxiety. They just suffered silently. So where we're at right now, people are talking about it. So they're the acceptable forms of, oh yeah, okay, I have it too. I hate to say it, it's like that Me Too movement where people feel comfortable with exposing those parts of themselves. So when it comes to narcissism, the hardest part of it is people don't see it as wrong. What happens is, and I've told people this before, trauma, deep trauma, really does start to look like personality. And so what happens is when, like I said, entitlement, when somebody's entitled, they don't know that they're entitled. Or if they do, they a lot of times are defensive about that, right? Or feel like they deserve whatever they think they deserve, right? So it's hard to tell them that, right? Or the need of constant admiration. Oftentimes it's circular. I didn't feel like I got it, so I'm pulling for it because I think I deserve it. And so they don't again see that as a problem. The obsession with perfection. Again, I'm somebody that operates and I just want things in order. You get what I'm saying? There are all these different things that seem individually like regular stuff. So the hardest part of getting somebody the real help they need as a narcissist is first acknowledging they are. So that's why it says a lot of therapists can't do it, because they won't even go to therapists, or they will go because somebody makes them go, and they won't acknowledge. They say, I don't know what I'm here for. I have no idea. I don't know what the problem is. It's really everybody else. Like I can see that. Like if they're like, I feel like if it was a skit about narcissism, like somebody be like, I don't know why I'm here. You need me to help you, doctor? Like I feel like it could be that. So that's what you've heard, Brittany. A lot of times it's like, and that's what you mean. That's what you put even here when you say it's like if they have to win or game over. That can be it as well, especially if they're very highly intelligent and they've learned the game, right? Because at some point they do not see it as something wrong. And if they're intelligent, they can get really circular. I don't want to go too far because sometimes that gets into the whole other thing of psychopath when you really don't, I don't want to go there, right? That's not where we're at. So it can be treated. It can be treated. I want to just say that because I think, again, people throw away narcissists. They do. They throw them away. And I don't want us to do that. I want us to talk about it. And I want us to say, I want somebody that's watching this show to literally say, wow, I think I'm a narcissist. Wow, I think I'm battling with this. This is something, this might be what's going on with my life. And from this conversation, they're able to say, let me talk to somebody. It's possible. I mean, again, there is, that's the hurdle of acknowledging that that might be you. But there are people who have, right? There are people currently in therapy right now working with it. Raven's telling you she's dealt with some narcissistic traits and actually went to therapy and actually hashed it out. So we're talking about success stories. I mean, so it's possible. So that's why we're talking about it. But great question, Brittany. Oh my God, I think that's one of the best questions because that's what people think of it, right? They do believe, hey, their endless case don't even work. I mean, again, there's a whole group called Surviving Narcissists, and their whole advice is get far away, change your numbers, don't ever associate again. I'm just like, yikes. For real. I mean, like, I'm not even joking, Raven.
I mean, it
That's a
does
real.
get to a point where you may have to choose release, because if someone is so far gone, like I think of it, yeah, like Tracy said, you have to be open. And I think of it because one time I was in New Orleans, and if anybody on a Cafe Du Monde and had any of the beignets, you know, it's like powder everywhere. So I was eating one, and one of my friends said, she said, Raven, you have some powder on your face. And I said, you know, I don't have a mirror. There's no way I would have been able to see myself unless someone told me that. So I said, thank you. And so oftentimes, we're not able to see ourselves because we don't have a mirror. And oftentimes other people are our mirrors. So we may not even be aware of things. Or even when we do point them out in other people, it's almost, we kind of got to ask ourselves, well, why are you attracted to people who act like this? You know, why are you a magnet to that? And so it's like always, as much as we want to seek offense, we have to seek understanding and kind of be altruistic, because a teacher, I think one of my elementary school teachers said, every time you point your finger, she said, look at how many I pointed back at you and address those. So it's really just the process of addressing, you know, the fingers that are pointing back at us. And sometimes I do get the release, and I have heard about other people just saying, you know, hey, this person just too far gone, and it is causing me to suffer to try to remain in contact with them, or it's causing me added trauma. Like after I've tried the boundaries, after I've tried the loving, you know, crucial conversations or whatever, people are just gonna make a choice. And like even the Alcohol Anonymous meetings, the first thing you have to do is admit you have the issue. And the moment we can admit that something may be wrong, and then people are like, oh, nothing's wrong with me. And I always say, when you know your friends or whatever come to you and they say, so and so is saying all of this, I'm the friend that say, you know what, you heard this from about 3, 4, 5 different people. You the problem. Did you ever consider that? You know, you're the common denominator. Like if this, that, and that person, and that stranger, and the person you grew up with is constantly saying the exact same thing, it's time to just sit and look introspective and say, okay, what's going on with me here?
Yeah,
There's something.
that's good. I love that you talked about that because that's a really big part of emotional intelligence. Being able to sit down and have self-awareness is the first step of emotional intelligence, guys. And if you were in my class, you would know this. I'm gonna have another one coming up soon. Um, shameless plug. But honestly, the first part is self-awareness, and what that is being able to see yourself. Like she's Raven said, that's such a good analogy. I cannot see the powder on my face because I don't have a mirror. But if somebody's able to say that to me, and then let's say this before we call people haters, before we say people are criticizing me, let's think about who's delivering the message. You got to have safe people around you. And this is how I tell people there are people in my past who have said things to me that I didn't like. Let's talk about it. Most people get very defensive when someone says something that they don't believe is true. And I remember someone said something to me about one of my actions, and I was just like, I was on the defense. I said, that's not true. You don't even know what happened. And I was like, you know, I spit my lip, you know, like, that's not it. You got it wrong. Blah, 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 blah. I was so fast with it to defend. And I really, at the time, I thought that I was right. One thing I think I'm grateful for, because I think sometimes we always talk about we got to be right in that moment. That's not life. In that moment, what you can do, and the one thing I'm just grateful that I have and I developed that I always have, is I go back later. And I go back and I sit back and I say, because stuff sits with me. I don't know about you. When somebody I care about says something that I don't like, it sits with me. And I go back and I have to like sort it out. And I'm like, was that true? Was I really like that? And I went to that person and said, hey, why do you think that was valid? And they told me, and I went back to sit with it. And you know what? Because I respected that person's opinion and I know they cared about me, I heard it. Let's say it again. I respected that person's opinion. I know they cared about me. I heard it. You got to be careful about having the right people around you, right? And I think that's a lot of people's trust issues, right? Is because I don't have the right people around me and I'm not sure they're really for me. And because if you're not really sure if they're for you, then you can't take any type of constructive criticism. Iron's supposed to sharpen iron. Okay? We're supposed to make each other better. If you can't ever take constructive criticism, then something, and that's something that's on here, can never take any level of constructive criticism, you got to watch that. If nobody can never correct you, not your boss, not your mama, not your friends, not your siblings, I'm talking about nobody. I'm talking about the judge, the police can't correct you. Let's just talk about it. If everybody got a vendetta against you, nobody can say anything to you. Remember I said an inflated sense of self-importance? Yeah. Just saying. You got to be careful about that. And if that's what it is the only way you can get help is, like she said, the first thing is admitting that there's a problem, right? Admitting that there's a problem. So that's really important. Brittany, when you said, do I agree with it? Help me figure out what you mean. I might have missed it.
I think what the person stated of like what they challenge you with, your behavior, when they said,
when I said, okay, when I said somebody says what your behavior with it, I did agree at the time. I did agree with it because I was able to sit back and look at myself and see. I think it takes a level of maturity. I think that's something I really have to say. You have to be willing to say that you are wrong and you were wrong. I agreed with it because I saw myself. I was able to see, they explained to me what I did and why I was wrong. And I was able to say, you're right. I overreacted in that situation. I was holding on to something else and I improperly acted. At that time, I took something, I was obviously had something that was brewing on the inside of me and I overreacted. And so that's how I was able to agree with it because I saw it. Now, again, there's another thing that happens where you have to be honest. A lot of people, I can't remember who said this. If anybody remembers who said it, let's go. And y'all say it, put it in the chat. Yeah, and Brittany, you said I respected them because I trusted and respected the person. That's exactly the reason why. I wouldn't. It's very hard for somebody to say something. And I'll say this though, the new me can actually hear a stranger saying something too. I know some of y'all won't agree with that, but that's gonna go somewhere different. I can take unbiased opinions. Mm-hmm. I can. Now that's a whole different level of trust there. What you do is you have to rightly divide it, right? I'm not just letting anybody walk up to me and say anything. But if there's some truth to what somebody's saying, it's possible. And somebody said, now you acted real ugly in that moment. I might not know them from Joe Blow on the street, but they can be right. They can be right but my level of self-reflection is there where I can be able to take that. No problem, Brittany. Thank you for the great question. But yeah, that's it. Being able to really say, is that something that I'm capable of, right? And wow, that I did do that. And I'm telling you, that's so hard to be able to say. But baby, the minute you get over that, the minute that you can say, that was ugly of me, or I was just acting out of jealousy, or I don't want that person to do better than me. I'm not saying these have anything. I'm just saying this is examples of being able to say the worst things about yourself. Sometimes we can't say it. And if you're not able to say that, you're not going to get far with healing. Healing requires you to expose the ugliest pieces of you.
You do.
And we all have them.
Evaluate your strengths and weaknesses, but in the corporate world, they call those opportunities of improvement, which they are in ways. That's it. Sit with those, it really once it does, it makes us defenseless against people who do. So like people would say, I don't listen. And they were right. I didn't, because you had to make it make sense to me in order for me to. And so it came from a level of so when I was raised, it was like I couldn't say no or I don't know. So if I didn't know, I could either be quiet or I had to just do whatever it is to, know. And it was just out of an anxious response, like I gotta know, or I take it personal when I didn't because I thought I'd be reprimanded for it. But I had to really introduce to myself as like, you don't know these days or situations or times. I've never this day, whatever it was, September 29th at 6:53. I've never been alive as such as a time as this. This was my first day doing this on the job. So it's like we're learning every single day. But it's like as long as you get to a point where you want to change and you want to do better, or like even like growing up, I used to say I want to be a better person than my mother was, just coming from where she was. But I didn't even understand, and that was the ignorance and the ego of me, kind of speaking out what I thought that I lacked, because I always felt inadequate. Never felt, and I've graduated top of my class and got awards and accolades, and none of that mattered because I never heard "good job, Raven," or "I love you, Raven" from my mother. So it's like I've always felt like I was chasing the next best thing. Like I didn't even like school, to be honest with you. I'm good at it because I like to learn, but I don't like it in the institution of school. That's another conversation. But it was just these things that I felt that I had to be, this pressure that was put on me. And I never felt like it was just good enough. And so it's like once I kind of sat with like, Raven, you're a pretty dope person. I had to sit with God and like, you think I'm kind of dope. I think so too, and it was just debunking everything that I had thought or learned about myself. And like we said, somebody asked like, where did they come from? And just quickly, I wanted to understand where did this come from. So most professionals and experts say the seed is planted in childhood. So what happens is a child has some parents, may or may not be in their lives, and like for me, most of my life, my mom was the only parent present on a consistent basis. So it's like I only had one example, but in her life, her father wasn't around, but my grandmother was, and that child feels neglected. Their emotional needs are not met. They don't know how to regulate because when babies cry, and ideally mothers are supposed to nurture, soothe them, and when that doesn't happen throughout life, the child begins to turn inward and not have that trust, and they have to put up a guard or a wall, and they have to make a reality that fits them. Like, well, I have to soothe myself, and anybody teaching anybody anything themselves that they never done is just kind of like I told PJ, it's kind of like if I give somebody some ingredient, like some materials to make a house. I don't give you a contractor number or a blueprint or architecture, anything. You're going to do the best that you can. But when you have this information and knowledge and support and resources, you can do a lot better. So when you give a child some materials of emotions to manage by themselves and they don't feel that they have that nurture, love, and support, they start to try to attract it. And so they become sad, angry, they act out, like getting in trouble, just anything to get that attention from their parent. When that doesn't happen, that's when things get very, very scary because they start to feel like, well, I'm entitled to this, I'm owed it. Somebody owes this to me and everybody's going to know it. Now we go into they start the gaslighting because they don't believe anybody else's experience is like theirs, or if it doesn't agree with theirs, it's not true. After gaslighting, now we go into narcissism. So after
Raven, I'm sorry. I'm going to stop you real quick because you're saying so many good things. I think you're breezing.
Get too
no, that's okay. I think that you're just breezing past a couple of really good things. Y'all, the first thing she said is it starts in childhood. Yeah. Do not take that personal. If you go to any therapist, the very first thing they're going to do is ask you what, Raven, about your childhood.
Anything in your childhood traumas. And I said no, not even going. I'm like, wait, I do.
Listen. Yeah. That's the first thing we're gonna say. No, we ain't got no trauma. No, that's not what happened. But that's the first thing they say. You know why? Because a lot of us are not dealing with new things. You think you are, but what you're doing is you're reacting to things with the unhealed version of you from a child. And so what happens is that what it's the stuff that you didn't deal with at this younger age, you are now reacting out of the walls that you built around your soul. Okay, so your mind and your heart. Okay, so this is what she's saying. I need to break that down to you guys. That's so good what she's saying. It's not just about narcissism, it's about most any mental health anything, right? That's number one. Number two, something else she said. There are roots to this stuff. Narcissism does not just come out of just childhood. It mostly comes out of the roots. Like the number one root, what she just talked about is rejection. Rejection is a root. Another root she talked about, abandonment. You can have both of your parents and feel abandoned. It's possible. All that means is that I feel neglected, and it doesn't mean it was purposeful. It means that it happened. It means I wanted extra time from you, and you had to work 3 jobs. Yes, you working 3 jobs was valid. Yes, that's what you had to do. You were a single mom or dad, but I still felt like I needed some more from you, and so that was a trauma for me. And as much as people might not like, they don't like to wrestle with that type of thing. It feels bad to say that, but that's just the reality of it. And that's that person's experience, and we can't invalidate it, right? We're talking about how it builds up. This is what Raven's talking about. She's doing an excellent job of explaining this, of how it's kind of made. Like, that show called how to make a serial killer. We're talking about how to make a narcissist, but these are certain things that we know that it comes from. So a lot of times it comes from childhood. Then it talks about the roots, different roots that happen. That's how they build up. So these are, and again, it's no one way. We're just giving some examples of usually, and if you talk to any, this is how we debunk it and figure out what it is. So she's then talking about, so different things, different neglects that you have, different, forms of, I like to call them holes. Like if you have a flat surface, but you have holes in and you put water on the water is going to fall through the holes. She's talking about holes and what happens when we have a bunch of holes that we don't know. And that hole could be rejection, abandonment, orphans, all that stuff, right? So she's doing a great job. I just want to kind of break that up a little bit. Okay, Raven, you can keep going.
No, it's just like, and then it's just one step after that. So after the narcissism trait or spectrum, it's just in the spectrum of how this thing kind of grows. Then we go into the psychotic thing, like the psychoanalytical part of it. And we do develop some real mental disorders because at that point, the brain has to do what it has to do to survive. So it's just a defense mechanism that it needs in order to cope with a reality, because it's our reality, or the person's reality doesn't make sense, so it has to do whatever it has to do. Like from my point, like I used to be like emotionless because it felt pain to have to, number one, suppress emotion, but also even if I did, they just fell through the cracks, just wasn't supported, nurtured, or even validated. So it's like I taught myself I don't need emotions. I'm a strong Black woman, and now I'm the biggest crybaby in the land, and I love it. I'm soft, and I love it because I had to learn no, your emotions wasn't supported, but you still do need those in order to have empathy and just be a functional human being. And so we suppress our traumas and say, oh, we're strong, but no, please let that stuff go. Start letting it out. You're stronger when you release that baggage and that weight from them. And yes, it hurts. Yes, it's painful, but I promise you the healing on the other side it's just worth it. It's so much worth it.
Okay, so I'm gonna unpack that. I'm sorry, I keep interrupting. It's just so good. It's so meaty. You talked about how you developed the psychosis part of it. That's the good part. Your brain is so smart. Your body's so intelligent. It literally has to protect itself.
Mm-hmm.
This is called survival. Your brain is almost like if you're on a safari in the middle of, you're in the middle of the African desert, and you have to survive to, you have to get some food to survive. Your brain is going to teach you how to hunt really quick. You're going to learn how to hunt because it's either you hunt or be hunted. Okay? That's how it works. In this world, if you're a child that did not get what you needed, your brain is going to adapt to protect you. And so if you, like she said, didn't feel loved enough, if you didn't feel validated, if you express your emotions and they told you to shut up, if you express your emotions and people didn't care, if you didn't express your emotions and you were told that you were too sensitive, these are all those things. And again, the person that might have told you those things might not have realized how big of a deal it was, but it was there, right? Um, it is there. So what happens is that your brain then builds a shell to protect you. And so the shell says, hey, like she said, I'm going to become, it's called emotionally numb. I'm going to become emotionally numb because guess what? I don't want to feel. Feeling hurts. Feeling, I feel not seen. Feeling makes me feel rejected. It makes me it doesn't feed me. So in order for me to go forward, let me disconnect those wires to my heart. I don't want those wires, those hurt. So now let me disconnect those things so that I can understand how to live life now, because you expect me to not be hurt, and I'm hurt because I'm triggered all the time. Why am I triggered? Because I'm sensitive, because all these holes are in my soul due to me not understanding that I'm carrying the bag of rejection, carrying the bag of abandonment, carrying the bag of whatever I'm carrying. Okay, so that's what happens. That's how the disorder is really created inside the average person, is because they've been hit with so much constant trauma. Literally. Here, Jasmine says something that's really good. Fight or flight with your brain connection. Absolutely. You build it up. And what comes, the part that's really um important to understand is that they're not aliens. They're not broken. We all have a form of people don't like the word trauma. I know it's misunderstood. I know it's triggering to say the word trauma, but we all have it. Don't think of trauma with a big T. Think of trauma with a little t. We all have multiple traumas. COVID was trauma
For everybody.
for everybody. That means if you lived through COVID, it was trauma for all of us.
Walking out scared to breathe. Like
Scared to breathe.
over there.
If you lost somebody or you didn't lose somebody, if you got COVID or didn't get it, it was scary for all of us. It was traumatic. You lived through 9/11, that's traumatic. All of that is, right? And so the reality of it is that to understand this, so when she's explaining about how it is created, that's how it happens. That's what happened. Your brain starts to protect you, and of course it's doing it in the worst way possible, but it is trying to protect you. And for some things it feels like it works well, right? Because you feel like I'm being protected from those emotions. And so I'm sorry, I'm gonna try to get, I want this to be a conversation, you guys, so I want to get some of the comments here. Tracy said a comment. She said the foundation of who we are as adults come from validation or lack of validation. It's definitely not because one parents were intentionally deriving, it's what a child felt. That's the perfect. I think sometimes people think again that when you speak about an experience, it is directing at the other party. But the reality is saying that whether or not you agree with the experience, that's my truth. And you should work to not invalidate that. My son Makai might say, Mom, you were demanding. I might not feel like I was demanding. I might feel like I had regular demands that a parent should have. But then I also, as somebody that looks at the psychology thing and understand how important what you say is and what your mind is, I have to validate his experience and say, that was never my intention to be demanding. And I hear you. And I hear that you said that I was demanding. Redefine what I was trying to do, but apologize as well. Anyway, but that was good, Tracy, what you just said.
And I just made the video about, I made it last year, but go and watch that taboo video of how we just don't know.
I saw that come up. That came up. I was like, that's good.
Yeah, this is how we all, like, even right now, we're all having an experience. We're all looking at this. I'm looking at a screen. I don't know what other people are seeing, but even if I were to say, hey guys, put in the chat the first thing you can point out about Pear's background, everybody will probably say something different. We're looking at the exact same screen, but our experience and how we're internalizing it just based off of what's attractive. Like, I see something stripes, behind you. That's just the first thing. I probably wear that. That's why I'm thinking, like, out of everything that I'm looking at, I probably wear that shirt or that blouse or whatever this may be. But it's like, that's my experience, and we can't take away somebody else's experience
Yep.
Just because same exposure, just different experience, and it is quite okay.
Different. It's
I didn't
it's
want to look
perfectly, it's
into.
true. I'm really about to go to Jasmine's comment real quick.
Yeah, that was
Um,
beautiful.
you said, where does the human part come in? I am spiritual, but I feel feels. We were taught through push through, and it's not healthy. That's such an excellent point. Um, I think the way I want to go, and I'm Raven, I'm gonna have you attack that too. I think when we talk about spirit, one thing we have to realize is we're flesh and spirit. You could be saved or a Christian or whatever you want to call yourself, and you just because you are spiritual or saved or whatever you want to call it, you still flesh. As long as you're still on this earth, you have flesh on you. So guess what? That's what I said. The renewing of the minds every day is that you have to deal with the fact that that flesh is on you, and you have to um get bring it under submission. Okay. So when we talk about the human part, that's the part you got to bring under submission. Yes, you can feel. Feeling is not bad. Again, and I don't know when you came in, Jazz, but what we were talking about, feeling is necessary. Emotional intelligence means you have a right to feel. You absolutely should feel, just not to be led by your emotions. Let me say it again. Emotional intelligence is to master how to handle your emotions without being led by them. I completely expect you to explore all of your emotional palette. Just don't be led. Don't let your decisions be led by your emotions. Don't let your behavior be led by your emotions. That's what we can't do. You cannot lead for it. Doesn't it say in the Bible that the heart is deceitful? There's no good thing in it. So when we try to lead from our emotions that are temporal, right? Emotions are temporary. If we try to lead from our emotions, we're going to always be deceived 9 out of 10 times. So what you have to do is acknowledge these feelings you have and say, I'm angry right now, and put that in a box. And you can sit in it for a second and say, I'm angry. I'm angry. I'm angry. I mean, Jesus got angry. I'm angry.
He
I'm
flipped
angry.
tables. I'm
Okay, he
waiting.
flipped tables, fam. That's what he did. I'm angry. I'm angry. But then guess what we don't do? We don't let anger become part of us. We don't let ourselves be angry for 2 days and a week. We don't let ourselves be angry with a person every time we see them. It's just brewing. You got to release it. You cannot stay there, right? So that's when you talk about not we were taught to push through and it's not healthy. No, we should not push through. You really should deal with it. But then you have to release. A part of emotional intelligence is, I'm teaching emotional intelligence. It's hilarious because it's part of this whole conversation. It's the actual underneath of it. But literally you experience it, feel it, and then release it. That's a good part of emotional processing. But I don't want to go too far in it. But yes, that was a good question. Raven, you want to add something to that?
Oh yeah, along with I believe the teaching of pushing through comes from the option of having to. So we can only teach what we know, right? Unless we learn or shown something different. So a lot of times, us as being Black women, sometimes we just don't have the option but to do anything different. The thing is, when we have that option, we do need to take a pause, because like I didn't even know what a mental health day was until I started working in corporate America. Now I will mental health day myself. I'm like, I need to mental health day.
Period.
So it's like sometimes it's cause to pause, but in that pause, it's not doing anything. Because even, you said just, in a spiritual sense that, the Bible says they that wait on the Lord. Waiting is actually not a stagnant word. It's very much so active. And when we're doing
Yeah.
something, what we're doing is unpacking. So I always make the analogy when it comes to unpacking things within us. Like when you were to clean up a room, it'd be different if your mom or your pops us came in there and like clean up this room and you threw everything in a closet. Ideally, aesthetically, that room looks clean, but everything's packed in a closet. So the more we
Yep.
do that
Yep.
closet is one day gonna burst because we
Yep.
never really dealt with anything. But when they say clean up and we're actually, picking up that bag of chips, putting it in the garbage, we're putting things in a proper place, folding the clothes, putting them in the drawers. We're tactfully doing something to create that aesthetic, and it's actually real versus a facade. We're
Yep.
doing something with that information and working it out, so that way we don't have any combustion. Like nothing can bust out of a closet when everything's been properly put away.
Yep.
So when we're pausing and we're figuring things out, we're addressing those triggers. We're seeing what's blowing me up, or what am I hiding? What am I afraid
Yep.
to face? and we're unpacking that so that way we can move forward. So pushing through, you know, you can't do that if you're carrying all this weight. You got to take that stuff off in order to move forward a little lighter and a little better. But it does take some time, and it does take a lot of work. And it is scary. I'm not gonna lie. Some of that stuff, when you face yourself, it's easy to face other people about how they wronged you and what they did to you than it is to just face yourself and sit in that thing and be like, listen, hey Raven, you your problem right now. You know, it's you, sis.
Yep.
It's you.
Yep.
And,
and sitting in it. Sorry, that's it. Sitting in it. It's very uncomfortable.
It's very uncomfortable. Yes. But the moment you sit in it, it's like the more power you get within yourself, because it's like, I can name my wrongs. You know, I can name where I was taught these behaviors that really did create unfavorable characteristics in my life, or behaviors that I wasn't aware of. But the moment I became privy, I became addicted literally to changing. Not necessarily like in a response like, oh, I want to change because somebody said something. It was like, no, life is meant to live, and it's meant to be lived well. You know, we didn't survive this pandemic for nothing. We really were meant to live our best life, and the best life is healed. You know, is healed and informed, learning some things, growing in some ways, and it's like, I want to keep growing. You know, I don't want to feel sad. I don't want to carry this anger or, you know, sadness that I've had in my heart, or, you know, in my spirit for years. I want to let that thing go. It's just literally making a choice.
That's so good, Raven. I just want to even say something that you didn't say with your words, but this is the part where why do you choose to heal? You choose to heal because if you don't, you're in the prison of your own mind and heart.
Yep. Forever. And
Let me say that again, because we keep on talking about how hard it is, but if you choose not to heal, you are forever in the prison of your own mind and heart. So when we talk about, like I said before, when we were talking about how some people say a narcissist are, you know, you can't do anything but throw them away. I don't believe that, because I have empathy for them. I feel very sad for most people who battle with this. I feel horrible because when you see it, well, sometimes you see the outward fighting, right? You see them causing problems and being this and that and feeling self-entitled and arrogant or whatever, all these different things that come up. But what you don't get is what's happening in the inside. What's happening in the inside, that it has to be super sad. What confusion is going on in the mind when you tell yourself everybody's against you? What happens when you believe you have nobody that supports you? How sad is that? And I'm not asking anybody to become a victim. I'm not building victimhood. What I'm saying is I can talk about these things because the empathy I have for people that suffer, and they're suffering in silence, because nobody wants to admit that I have narcissistic tendencies. Nobody wants to admit that I might be a narcissist. Nobody want to say that. And it's very hard to have somebody that has a lot of those tendencies to get it. But I feel like the more we talk about it, it really can open a conversation for us to really be able to go forward. Brittany, I want to address something you just said, but before I do that, guys, I know we're over an hour, but I think the conversation is good. So if you're good, Raven, go a little longer.
Okay.
Okay, we're going to be finished just a little longer. I just want to bring up a couple of things that, just in case you're just joining us, here's 9 common traits: inflated self, sense of self-importance and entitlement. But deep down, they feel like they are, they really do feel like they're the best, the most successful, everything, right? So it's just kind of, even if that's not true, needing constant admiration. That self-esteem is like a balloon without a knot. So it's almost like you can never compliment them enough. You can never give them enough praise, never enough recognition. They don't even see it. And it's almost like it's never enough. The next one is expecting special treatment, whether it's favors or apologies. Oh my God. Let me look into this camera. Have you ever met somebody that just, you can't apologize enough and it's never enough for them? Okay, I digress. And whatever you believe you deserve, it's like, it's just, you got to give them more. Exaggerating achievements and talent, and they have no problem embellishing facts, which then easily leads to lying. and they believe their lies. It becomes to a point where they literally start to believe the things that they're saying. The brain is very fragile. You start saying something enough, you will believe it. If you ruminate on a thought long enough, you will believe it. That's just it. That's why people say be careful what you put in your ear gates and your eye gates. The things that you put your mind on is very easy for it to go. They become preoccupied with fantasies of power, success, and beauty. Those are things that just become a really obsessive thing to them. Um, and they create narratives, unrealistic narratives around them. They take advantage of others. They exploit people very easily. They usually have an inability. Hear this part, because this part is probably why people really get triggered about narcissists. They have inability or unwillingness to recognize the needs and feelings of others. Again, I need you to see me and understand my feelings, but my feelings are more and more important than yours. I can't really see your feelings, but do you see my feelings? Feel me. And a lot of times they're super sensitive, but they can be very harsh. It's almost like they can cry, but as they're crying and breaking down, they take a knife and stab you, because literally they just see the fact that they're hurting, right? Um, and then like the last one is the acting in an arrogant manner. So those are like those traits. Again, not one of those things make you a narcissist. Those are narcissistic traits. And again, the only way that you can really be able to be diagnosed is by a doctor. Um, and so those are very important for you to understand. And then I wanted to just bring up one other thing that I think Brittany was talking about, and you talked about, Raven, is the idea that if you are around somebody that has become very abusive to you and they have these narcissistic traits, yes, I'm trying to tell you about empathy, and the fact that you really should care about people and understand how they were created, what happened, how is it possible to be one, even if it's you yourself. But if you are around somebody that is becoming very abusive to you emotionally, spiritually, because there's such thing as spiritual abuse, um, financial abuse, physically, emotionally, mentally. I think I said all of them. You not only do you have a right, but I expect you to put up healthy boundaries. You have to. You have to. And when we talked about that group surviving narcissists, there are people that are so far gone. And I'm not saying they're not helpable, but I'm saying they are at the point where they don't see it and they're very abusive and toxic to certain relationships. You have the right to protect yourself. You have a right to protect yourself. So if you are in relationship with someone and you're like, oh my God, this is exactly what I've experienced, then yes, then it's your best ability to put up boundaries. And sometimes that has to be non-contact, whatever that looks like for you. So don't let me sit here and tell you, no, you have to deal with somebody that is treating you in horrible ways. Nope. What I am saying is that if there's somebody's listening to me that are dealing with these traits and dealing with narcissistic personality disorder, that you can be fixed. You don't have to be thrown away. Don't let people tell you that, and this is about education. This is about having conversations that lead to healing. If one person leaves this live and goes and get a get a therapy session, I'm grateful. If one person leaves this live and has a conversation with their family members, I'm grateful. If one person leaves this conversation and really sits down and really thinks further about what we've been talking about and how it applies to them, I'm grateful. So, um, is there anything else you want to share? I know we can't fit it all into one live. To be honest with you, me and Raven talked about this. It's possible we might have to talk about this again because it's so meaty and it's so deep. But I think we've done a good job of kind of going, and then from the interaction, the engagement is amazing. I appreciate you guys engaging so well. Raven, you have anything else you want to share?
No, not today. I
Okay.
think that's enough.
That is enough. It is enough right now.
It can be not necessarily overwhelming, but right. That's I guess that'll be the last thing that's kind of like, if you know, or someone you know that are currently experiencing or dealing with this, the best thing you can do is just exude boundaries and stand on them. And I know if you've been raised in this thought, it's really hard to do that because you don't like to feel wrong. You're
Mhm.
right. for protecting yourself, as Ronisha, I believe that is, who said that boundaries are so paramount, and they hurt. And it's gonna feel like they hurt other people, but they really do protect us. And it doesn't mean you love them less or anything like that. However, it's just basking in the self love that you have for yourself. And to, like I always tell people, I'll never ask you to treat me less than I treat myself. I'll never ask anybody to do that. So if I'm calling myself, a B word, and other people do too, I'm okay. But that's something I don't adhere to. So it's like I don't want to hear that, So it's like I just set the standard for myself,
Yeah.
and anybody can get it. Like, and I always say I don't care who I piss off to enforce my boundaries, but
That's good. That's that protection. That's good. I know this is a lot, and like we talked about, this subject is so heavy. So I understand what it's like, Raven, to you, for you to talk, and it's just a lot. I appreciate it though, for you coming on and really just being very transparent and open. You're amazing. I love the self work that you're doing. I love that you. I remember the day that you said, "Hey guys, I think I'm going to give me a therapist," and I didn't know why, but it didn't matter. I was supportive because I just know that's the best form of self care, and I was just so grateful. And to know that you put a lot of intention in it is so dope. Guys, I love you guys. I love all of you guys. Walk away from this with a sense of, I know a little bit more about this subject, and let's have another conversation. Have a conversation on your break with some of your coworkers. Have a conversation with your family members at the next dinner table or card party. Have a conversation with your significant other when you guys have some alone time. You just never know what you can achieve with a conversation. Thank you guys for tuning in. Listen, y'all, I'm back, and we're gonna do more of these conversations. I like talking to people, so maybe we'll do more of these. But thank y'all for tuning in. It's been amazing. I love you guys to life, and don't forget, you are enough. And I'm gonna tell you that until you believe it, because a lot of y'all don't believe it, and so I'm gonna say it, and maybe you'll start believing it if you say it too. Remember, what you say comes, it manifests. Okay, so let's go for that. I love you guys. Have an amazing night.
I love y'all. Love you too, Tracy. Take care.
Love you, Trace.
All right.